Thank you for tuning in to another episode of my Veterans to Success podcast. You probably know by now, my mission is to help 1 million veterans and entrepreneur business owners achieve the dreams, goals, and aspirations they deserve. That is why I created the Veterans to Success podcast, because I get to interview guys, men and women, who want to share their fascinating stories with you about their time before, during and after their time in the military, so you can benefit and overcome your challenges. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be mesmerised, astounded, and entertained. Hello and welcome to another episode of Veterans to Success, the podcast where I get to speak to seemingly ordinary people who have extraordinary stories. And today I'm talking with Scott. Scott, thank you very much for joining me today. It's great to have you on the show.
No problems at all, Joe. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about what you're doing now a bit later. And as you know, when we had the pre-live and when we had our chats before, there's no great fanfare for the common man or the common woman. We just dive straight in, and there's no big introduction to the amazing things that you've done in your life, because we do a steady reveal, right? So I'm going to start with taking you back to when you were a young lad. So what was happening way before you joined the military? What was going on?
Yeah, so it probably doesn't sound like it now. I've spent quite a few years in England now, but I actually grew up, I was actually born and raised in my early years in Glasgow. So the mean streets of Glasgow, I was born into a place called Pollock. If anybody does know Glasgow, they'll know it's an acquired taste, let's put it that way. I will never call it rough because I've got family members that have still there. It's spirited. Let's call it spirited.
And guess what? We've got something in common straight away, because I was born in Glasgow as well.
Yeah, I was Glasgow Southern General.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Well, same as.
Was it? Yeah, I was a South Sider boy, based down the south side of the river. And then probably about 8 or 9 years old, the family, because there was 3 boys, there was myself and my 2 stepbrothers. My family moved down to Leicester in the hope that we would have a better chance of jobs. And it just so turns out that one joined British Gas, one joined the Army, and one joined the Air Force. So it was all jobs that we could have done in Scotland anyway. So they didn't need to worry. They could have just stayed there and would have all probably hopefully got into the same jobs and careers and stuff like that. But who knows? But we all ended up joining national things that we could have joined from Scotland rather than being disinterested in work up there.
I bet you had some interesting stories with your brothers, and especially your brother in RAF.
Oh no, I was the one that's in the RAF.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, sorry.
Yeah, so he was. For the story that I usually go back to about his army career. So he started off as REME. So he started off in the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers. And very quickly he rebadged. But he rebadged to RMP. So he rebadged to be a police RMP. And on my pass out for the Air Force, I probably joined about 3 or 4 years after him. And on my pass out for the Air Force, he'd sort of come in civilian clothing, got changed in a car somewhere, and then just sort of scurried into the back where all the crowd was. And as we were about to march out, the big military band ready to go, ready to strike up, and we're about to march out and stuff, one of the corporals came through to the back where we're all stood and goes, "Who the effing hell is that guy through there that's an RMP?" And I went, "It's my brother, Corporal." And he went, "Why didn't you tell me your effing brother was an effing RMP?" I went, "Because I wouldn't have passed this course, Corporal." And he went, "Yeah, effing right you wouldn't." So yeah, that's one of my favourite stories about his time in the military. Don't get me wrong, he had an illustrious career. He was brilliant. He did 20 odd years and he was flipping mentioned in dispatches and all sorts of stuff.
Oh, wow.
But the only thing that I tend to revert back to is the fact that if they'd have known that my brother was an RMP, I wouldn't have passed out my military career. So yeah, I like to keep it a little bit secret that he was a military police officer.
Well, yeah, understandably so. And when you said he was in Remy, and I know anyone, if you're listening and you're in Remy, you're going to know exactly what I'm going to say. Being a Royal Engineer, we say Royal Engineers Made Easy or Royal Engineers minus education. But anyway, that's the pun done now. We'll move on before someone from Remy says, well, I'm not listening to this anymore. Yeah, so you went for the RAF. Now you didn't have the easiest upbringings, did you really?
No, so and I dare say it's quite a common story in Glasgow. It might be massively stereotyping there. It might just be the environment that I grew up in that I seen it quite a lot. But around that time, there was a lot of alcohol that's involved in stuff. That was just it was a norm up there back in the day that quite a lot of people would drink quite a lot, and it was what I was born into really. Both my father and my mother both succumbed to alcohol. I probably lost my mum when I was probably roughly about 6 years old due to
Oh,
alcohol, and then my dad a lot later on. And it sort of shaped a feeling towards that sort of stuff, but it also shaped how I sort of thought you had to enjoy yourself. I thought you had to be like drunk, really drunk to enjoy yourself. And I think that sort of suited a military lifestyle. In the sort of part of the RAF that I joined, only males could join at the time. So I was joined by flipping hundreds and hundreds of like-minded people that had just been shoved into this place together. And it always seemed that if you ever fancied a drink, there'd always be someone that wanted to drink with you. So yeah, that sort of carried on for quite a lot of my career, to be honest. And I did see some people that went too far, as I'm sure most of us did in the military. But
yeah.
fortunately, I managed to stay just on the correct side of alcohol when we did see some other people around us going the wrong way.
So when did you decide, and what made you think I'm going to join the RAF? Were you spurred on by your brother, or were
No, so I had absolutely no inkling that I wanted to join the military, and I had no feeling of joining the military. So both my brothers were both army cadets, so they were both part of the 9 of 12 Royal Lancers Army Cadets. But I always played football, so that was my weekends. Their weekends were going away on army camps, on cadet camps. But I was football Saturday, Sunday. That was just my whole life was football. And then I'd got into an engineering apprenticeship when I left school. And although I quite liked engineering, I didn't like the company that was an engineer apprenticeship in. And I
right?
was sort of at a bit of a loose end with it. And I was sort of like, I need to change something up here because I just can't keep working for them. But at the time, I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And a really, really good friend of mine was going into the careers office. He's been down before, and they talked about his joining. And he says, "I don't suppose you'll come along with me, and just I'm going to be there for an hour, just sit, chill out, and then we'll grab a beer in town or whatever it may be." So I went down, and as I'm sat there waiting for him, the Army careers people and the Air Force careers people, they're on you. They were on you. They were obviously desperate to get people in. So they were like, "So what do you do then? What do you do? Why wouldn't you want to join? Look at this thing that we can offer you." So he sort of spoke to me for a little while, this RAF careers guy. And at the time, I went, "Well, do you know what? If it came to it, I could go and get a trade. I could probably see a bit of the world. He'd given me the big sell and all that sort of stuff." So I'd said to him, "Right, I tell you what, I'd be interested in finding out more information if I could carry on my career in there, sort of finish off my apprenticeship, go and work on some aircraft somewhere, and then see where it takes me." So he'd said, "Yeah, that all sounds brilliant, but there's no intake at the minute. We've got enough of those people, but what we can do is we can put you on a waiting list, but we can get you into another trade first, and then we'll rebadge you once you get in." So I'd already known that my brother had sort of rebadged and was talking about rebadging, so I thought that was a thing. So I says to him, "Right, so what are you talking about me joining? What do you need people in?" And it was the RAF regiment, which is basically, it is what it is. It's shooting things and stuff like that. But he was like, "Don't you worry. After you've passed out of training, you'll be able to rebadge. You'll be able to go and do your engineering and stuff like that." And it was just so happens that that's what my mate was joining. All he wanted to do was get his parachute wings, jump out of aircraft. That was his dream. So he was like, "You can go and join on the very same day as your best mate. You can both join together, and you can flip and go and do this stuff." He said, "You're into
So
your
basically,
football,
you
you're
were doing anything to sell this dream to you.
absolute lies, absolute lies." So he sold me the dream. He showed me the pictures of being in flipping armored personnel carriers, jumping out of aircraft. Every Wednesday, I was going to get off to play football. all of that sort of good stuff. And I'd gone all the way through the training. And then right at the end, I got a posting, but the posting was absolutely crap. It was looking after nuclear weapons on an air base in Suffolk, which is where I'd done my training. So I'd been there for ages, and I was just based on this really, really dead end flipping looking after nuclear weapons job. And I had in the back of my head, it's all right because at some point they've got me on this waiting list. I'll be able to retrade and go and do my engineering. And I spoke to my first boss, my first CO, and he says to us, that is not a thing. You just can't do that. We've paid all this money for training. We're not just going to let you go off and do a different thing now. And I was like, I was promised. Like, that was my route. That's what I was going to go in to do. And he just went, no, what you'll have to do is you'd have to leave the military. So PVR was 18 months at the time. So I'd have to PVR, do 18 months to wait to get out. And then he says, you're going to have to try and rejoin again. So I was just like, all right. So I ended up just staying for 9 years doing the RAF regiment after that.
Right. Well, that was a bit like, because I remember they said, oh, join the army, see the world. And I do remember vividly joining the army and sweeping the world. The amount of outside areas I had to do was half the time looking for fag stumps and paper and everything else, not seeing it.
Well, one of our badges is the cross rifles. But like you say about sweeping, we changed it to cross brushes. So we took out the rifles and put brooms in. So we've swept many a hanger. There's been many a hanger swept.
So after your nuclear weapons guard and actually realizing and receiving the nuclear news that you were going to have to stay in RAF regiment, what was going on in your mind?
So I knew I just had to sort of see that one out, really. But to be fair, the shift patterns on that were absolutely fantastic. I think it was something like 4 days on, 4 days off, 4 nights on, 4 days off. So it was incredible. And although the job wasn't the best, we had a good bunch of people that we'd always have a big old long spell of being able to go to Liverpool with all the Scouse lads, go up to Scotland with some of the Scottish lads. So we just do quite a lot of like hitting everybody else's hometowns and all that sort of stuff. So although the sort of the working part of it wasn't the best, the playing part of it was really good. Like we had loads and loads of time off, but the only thing was it was shift work. So a lot of the time, most of the squadrons would work, unless they were on deployment, most of the squadrons would just work Monday to Friday, the occasional thing to travel to somewhere on a weekend. But we'd constantly be working on a Friday and Saturday night or a Sunday day, and just like nobody else seems to be doing this. Why are we doing this rubbish? But yeah, do you know what? It was what it was. It was about 3 or 4 years.
And staggering on. So what did you find most interesting? What did you get up to that you can remember that was interesting during that 3 or 4 year period?
Loads of football. Got into the football. So at the time, I used to play for a civvy team out on a Saturday afternoon. Sat with I think a lot of people get ingrained into the military at that point when they first start. But I really enjoyed being able to go out and actually play civilian football with locals, with normal people. And I was playing all the way up to regiment level and stuff like that. So,
all right, so pretty good standard then.
Not well. I think I was just surrounded by good people that made me look good. I think that's what it was. All the rest of them must be quite good. But yeah, just mainly got into football, and then all the usual things about traveling around with mates and stuff. Had my first lads holiday with a few of the lads from the squadron and stuff like that. So yeah, there was just it was quite a good grounding. And I think it was because we were doing the job we were doing, we were never on a deployment list. So we were never doing pre-deployment. We were never away. We were never doing post-deployment. So we were always there. So we'd always try and find things to keep us busy. And it was usually holidays or weekends away, stuff like that. So it was really, really good. It was really good apart from the work-wise.
Yeah. So even though work, rest and play, the rest and play was pretty cool. And the work bit maybe not as enticing as you thought. So you served there for 4 years. Then what happened?
So I went up to RAF Leeming after that. So I went to a squadron called 34 Squadron after that. Really, really cool part of the country to be in, beside Catterick Garrison and all that sort of stuff. So it was a really, really nice part of the country to be in. And again, they were just about to go out and do some. It's about 2000, 2001. So they were about to go out and do some rolls through it, Ali Al Salem Air Base out in Kuwait. So I got involved in quite a lot of the pre-deployment training and stuff quite quickly for them. And then we went out to there. I think the squadron went out for 6 to 8 months or something out there in total. So that was quite good. It was quite quiet over there at the time. It was just nice. Bearing in mind, I'd just been on that flipping nuclear job. It was just nice to be on something away. Like, just that's what I thought it'd be. I thought it'd be away all the time. So we were just over there, and we got involved in quite a few good things. They had a unit out in the desert that was looking for flipping nuclear stuff coming over and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, there was quite a few good things that we got involved with there. We got involved with the Americans quite a lot. Used some of their kits, some of their vehicles. Our Land Rover 110s weren't the best in the sand. So they would have their Humvees that would regularly pull us out of places. So yeah, it was good. It was just really, really eye-opening to get involved in different people, different parts of military and all that sort of stuff. It was really, really good over there, actually.
That's interesting you say that, because I remember we had with the old Land Rover back in the 80s. We had a competition. It was it was the late 80s, and we had a competition with the Humvee, and it was going over some undulating ground. And you know that the Humvee's long wheelbase, isn't it? And,
Yeah.
and it was down to the driver rather than the vehicle. He hadn't approached the hump at like 45 degrees, so he got it stuck on it, and he was pivoting on it, and we were laughing our heads off because we'd just gone over in this clapped out Land Rover and beat him, and he was gutted.
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, it was very rare we were ever helping them get out of the crap in the middle of the desert. They were quite often helping us get out of the crap. And again, it might just be down to operator error. It might have been the drivers. It might have been our fault. But yeah, it was quite regular that they were coming out and pulling us out of a flipping bit of sand somewhere.
And that's what it's all about at the end of the day, isn't it? Teamwork and just coming together.
Yeah, definitely.
So when you got back from Kuwait, then what was going on then, operations wise, and what year was this, by the way?
So I think it was just after millennium. I think it was about 2001. So there wasn't a great deal going on. And then from there, I'd always wanted to do Northern Ireland, mainly because you got a little bit more money. So whereas quite a lot of the army would run through is sort of like 6, 9, 12 months, we had a permanent squadron base there. I think they were based there for something like 30 odd years in the end. So we would go over for 3 years at a time. So I didn't actually spend that long on 34, to be honest. I went, did Kuwait, did a couple of other little bits and bobs, and then I already had my paperwork in to go to Northern Ireland anyway. That'd been in for a while. So I went over to Northern Ireland, but instead of doing 3 years over there, I did 2 years because they were looking for people to join a squadron up in the north of Scotland, up at Lossiemouth. They just didn't have enough numbers up there. So at the time, I had stuff going on with my marriage where she'd moved back home. She'd lived in Ireland with me. She moved back home. We weren't getting on with the distance and my young son and stuff like that. She was trying to look after a baby, and I was just over in Northern Ireland. And I volunteered to take a year early move back to Scotland so that she could come up there and live again. She really didn't like it living in Northern Ireland. She her very first job, she had a couple of jobs out there. Her very first job was working for PSNI out there, so the Police Service Northern Ireland. And she was doing admin, but the first case that she was working on with admin was Johnny Adair's son. So she's like, what, as if I've been thrown in at this deep end.
Oh.
And the very first morning, they said to her, every single day you change which route you go home. And she was, by lunchtime, she was, I'm out. I'm not doing this. That's his job, not mine. He signed up to all this stuff, not me. Yeah. So yeah, she left that by lunchtime. But I liked all that stuff over there. I liked the excitement of of what went on over there and just the buzz of the place and stuff. I really enjoyed my time over in Northern Ireland. At one point, I actually looked at buying a house over there and settling. I really, really liked Northern Ireland. It was a brilliant place.
And so when you got back to Lossiemouth, how did that rekindle your marriage?
Not very well. Not very well. I think, yeah, I think
I'm
at
laughing
the time,
actually. I'm laughing, but that's only because you smiled, not for any other reason.
I've been in two jobs where it seems to be that either the military or the fire service, everybody seems to have at least one divorce behind them. So I got mine in quite early. So yeah, she came up there and she lived in married quarters up there. Again, it didn't last long. I think she was just one of these people that needed the pull of home. So she went home after not long. So I was back in the barrack block again, being with the boys and all that sort of stuff. And then I think it just got to the point where I was like, right, I either need to probably split up the marriage or go back and leave the military behind and try it, the marriage. So I tried the marriage. I left the military behind after 9 years, thought I've given this a bit of a good go, and then went back and ran her mum and dad's pub in North York Moors just for a totally different change.
And how did that go? How long did you run the pub for?
Again, it sounds like I'm really sort of transient. I did. It always there was three things I'd always wanted to be in my life. I wanted to be a footballer. That was never going to happen. I was never up to that standard. I wanted to be a firefighter. I luckily managed to get that done later on. But then I also wanted to be a pub owner. So having their pub to run and operate and manage and all that sort of stuff, I thought this is the dream. I've got cheap accommodation. I've got a pub. I've got all this stuff going on. But it was in a really, really small village in the North York Moors. And don't get me wrong, if I was given the opportunity now, I'd probably snap the hands off. But at the time, it was just too quiet. I'd come from the military where it was all fast and loose and all that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden, I was in a really, really small village in North Yorkshire where everybody knew each other. I was a bit of an outsider that was just a bit different to everyone. And it just wasn't the right time. Like I can, bearing in mind, I've grown up in Glasgow and then Leicester. I can remember coming down on like a Wednesday to do a shift, and there was like birds hanging up all over the bar. And I was like, heck is this? And they go, yeah, every Wednesday we have the shooting. I was like, I've never had a bird hanging anywhere that I've ever seen in my normal pubs that I drink in. And it was just a totally different way of life. It was all country gentry. It was shooting pheasants and it was all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, it was just different to what I'd ever experienced in it. Although I enjoyed it, I didn't enjoy it as much as what I thought I would. So at the time, the fire service were recruiting. So I had a look at joining the fire service back in the city where I sort of spent a bit of time in Leicester.
And isn't that spooky? Because when I left the military and became a financial advisor, and then times were tough, I've been a DJ and a doorman. And then a few years later, the mother and father-in-law provided the deposit, and we bought a workingmen's club in Rochester, Kent. Well, Isle of Grain, which is a small village outside of Rochester, Kent. And we turned it into a nightclub. Because using my DJ skills and my doorman skills, security, and financial skills, we turned this place around. And because it was in Kent, guess what? The village, some of the villages didn't like people, northerners, which was interesting. But actually, once they got to know me, they were all right. But there was some interesting times initially. And then 2 years of that, and then same as you, that was enough. I'd had that experience. So yeah, that's really good that you recognise that. So now you're looking at the fire service.
Yeah. So I was very, very fortunate. A lot of people, they try for the fire service for years and years and years. Some people give up because they've tried 10 times. They've tried different fire brigades around the country. I was really, really lucky that I managed to get into my home fire brigade first time. And I don't know, I genuinely, I think to this day, if it wasn't for the military, I don't think I'd have got in. Back then, they looked for two things really, from what I can gather from people that were recruiting back then. They looked for ex-military and they looked for people that was sort of had a bit of a mechanical background, sort of people like carpenters, vehicle mechanics, that sort of thing, because we work basically, the fire engine is a big toolbox that you use the bits of things that are in there to overcome the challenge, whatever it is that's in front of you. So they generally like those two sorts of things. And I genuinely think that the thing that got me in was the fact that I was ex-military, and there was a bit of a story to tell behind it that some other people there may not have been able to if they worked in a shop or if they worked in a whatever. I do think the military story is always a little bit more interesting than most people's story. I just think it is to some people.
Of course, and I find that comes through when a lot of the guys that I talk to on the podcast, that usually speaking, we just got something a little bit different. That's not to say that civilians aren't any good. It's just that we have a way to look at life's adversity a little bit differently, and sometimes the warped sense of humor helps, because when someone's in pain, instead of giving them sympathy, you give them a laugh, right, or something just to help them get over it. So now that you've decided to join the fire service and leave your mum and dad, well, the mother and father-in-law's pub, how does that go down with your wife, and what happens then?
We split up very quickly. It turns out that because she was quite transient of like living in Northern Ireland. So we lived in North Yorkshire for a little while. I was getting posted to Northern Ireland, so we got married very quickly. We ran off to Vegas after 10 months and got married. That was never going to work, was it? So she lived in Northern Ireland with me for a little bit because you had to be married to live together. And then she moved to Scotland with me for a little bit, and then she just kept coming home. And then it turns out that when I lived with her at mum and dad's place, and then we got a house back down in Leicester, it turns out that we didn't get on very well. So actually, when we spent a bit of time together, we didn't actually get on very well. So the marriage split up quite soon afterwards. Basically it was quite soon into being down in Leicester again that the marriage split then.
And that's interesting, because I remember that, I don't know what probably before your time, there used to be a washing powder called Omo, right? And this is a true story. Where we were, Royal Engineers, you'd be posted or go on tours different times. Like we served with EOD, the Explosive Ordnance, who I served with later. But they showed the camp. Then we had other people in search and rescue, and they'd go off, and what had happened is you'd see, I didn't understand because I was only in my 20s, early 20s, and you'd see this washing powder box, Omo, on the window ledge, right? So you could see it was in the kitchen, and what it meant was old man out. Yeah, true story, and you can guess the rest, right? So what you found was that once the guys were living in the pad instead of being in the singlish block, they discovered that living together was a little bit different than going out with each other as a boyfriend girlfriend, and that was when. And I'm not saying all military weddings end like that, not at all. It's just that sometimes if you do the Vegas stuff and it's 10 months without getting to know each other, then interesting stuff happens. So, because we're going to be talking about social networking a bit later and how to get to know people. And I think that's an important point, isn't it? That makes sure, because a partnership, marriage, is just about the closest relationship you'll have. And it's about getting it right, isn't it? Or as right as you possibly can.
Yeah, needless to say, I didn't want to make the same mistake twice. So I get married in December this year, but she's upstairs. I hope she can't hear me. But yeah, we've managed to, I think we're about 8.5 years in now. So what I didn't want to do is have another rush and then break up two marriages. So we've took our time with this one to make sure that we've both chose wisely. So yes.
And how did that, by the way, how did that affect your relationship with your son, did you say?
Fine. Yeah, fine. There's been periods where he's lived with us and stuff like that. We've been all done the family holidays and all that sort of stuff. I think it's like if you were to go to a school and take out 100 children, dare say maybe 50 of them are from a house where the mum and dad don't live together anymore,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
more. So I think it's quite normal for children to go, I'm going on holiday with my stepmom, my stepdad,
Yeah.
whatever it may be now. So yeah, it's been absolutely no problem at all. So
And I think that's down to resilience as well, because I've got two children from a first marriage, and I keep well in touch because what I say with tongue in cheek is that as a parent, you were there at the conception, right?
yeah,
So you should be there on the upbringing, because it's
yeah.
the responsibility doesn't end. I mean, people say a dog is for life, not just for Christmas. Well, guess what? Then
So's a kid.
a child it certainly is, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And he's off at university now, so he's doing his own thing. Like, but yeah, he's living a good life at the minute now. So it's not affected him as much as we can see. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
brilliant.
yeah, he's good. He's good.
Fantastic. So, yeah, so fire Bobby, right? And I remember because it is an easy transition from the military. I didn't choose that one, but a lot of my mates went into fire service, prison service, police. More fire service and police than prison service, but the three, because also it's transferable with your pension rights and everything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So what made you think, yeah, I'm doing it?
So I'd always want to do it anyway. I'd always wanted to do it. It was just one of those jobs that I used to look at when I was a little kid and go, I'd really, really like to do that thing. But then I think it also gave me back some of the stuff that I think I was missing from the military, the
Yeah,
camaraderie, the teamwork, and I didn't get that when I went and ran the pub in North York Moors. I just didn't get that. And I think that I thought that the fire service would be like a slightly grown up version of the military. You're not allowed to do all the stuff that you used to get away with in the military. It'd be a slightly more grown up version of it, but still quite the same.
yeah,
And because there was a load of ex-squaddies and stuff in there, it was quite the same. Times have changed now. I've been doing it for nearly 20 years now. Times have changed, and they needed to change, I think, a lot of the time. But yeah, there was still that camaraderie and stuff, and the teamwork and all that sort of stuff that I'd sort of left behind with the military that I wanted to find again. When you talk about transition, that's one of the hardest things that I found. Although I had at the time the support of my wife and my child was there and stuff like that, I missed all the lads. I missed that camaraderie. I missed having 100 people that I could probably say, fancy a game of football, fancy a drink,
yeah,
fancy a
yeah,
weekend away. I really, really missed that. And I think a lot of people don't realize what they've got until it's gone.
yeah,
I joined up at 2 days after my 18th birthday. So it's really all I'd ever known in my adult life. It was all I'd ever known. And then all of a sudden, although they're still there somewhere, they're not next to you, they're not in the next
yeah,
bedroom. So
yeah.
yeah, it was one of the things that I found really, really difficult actually was just not having that big group of people somewhere near you.
And I think that, I mean, I feel for the youngsters of today that they can get all tied up in the social media world in itself, and it's not real a lot of the times. And there's me saying that, and we're doing a podcast, right? But I mean, this podcast is all about truth, reality, and telling real life stories. Not like that you can become a millionaire overnight, because a lot of these people on social media, these youngsters, I know, are hiring Lamborghinis or hiring a car to look like they've made it, and I fake it till you make it. Yeah, I've got my own opinion on that, and we don't need to do that right now. What I can say though is it's interesting that you were talking about the camaraderie, because in the military, right, you never had a problem for long. The simple reason is because you told your mate, they told someone else, and then by the end of it, everyone's supporting you or taking the mick out of you, one of the
I was
other.
going to say after they ripped into you for a little while. Yeah, that was
So
the usual thing.
yeah, so of course, I remember it, yeah, painfully. So the transition was interesting for you. When
Yeah.
you went for the fire service, the initial training, what was that like? Was that like as strict, or did you see similarities or what?
Nowhere near. there was still the fire service went away from ranks and things like that. So it used to be like you'd call people sir, like you would do in the military and stuff. There was no back then. There was no two-tier. It was like you came through as a firefighter and worked your way up. But once you got to station manager, you started calling people sir and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they went away from all of that, and it sort of started getting less and less and less. And I went there thinking, right, the typical military thing, just stick your head down, be the grey man, just plod on, get through it, get through it, get through it. If they tell you to jump, say how high and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And the very first day I got there, they went, who's ex-military here? And there's a few of us that were ex-military. And they went, right, you lot need to show this lot how to iron, how to polish their shoes, all this sort of stuff. So I was like, so maybe there's a little bit of an advantage to being ex-military here. But that was it. After that, there was a little bit of the bull crap of like running out hoses and all that sort of stuff. But after that, it wasn't very military, because the fire service traditions come from Navy traditions back in the day that I didn't understand that. So I sort of went in and went, yeah, a lot of our stuff comes from Navy traditions. So I was thinking, this is going to be like flipping training for the military then, isn't it? But it wasn't. It was polished shoes, not bald shoes. It was iron stuff, but not pristine ironing. So yeah, it was there was no like room inspections or anything like that. It was just get your head down, do the work that you need to do, and then in 12 weeks or 13 weeks, we'll spit out a new firefighter at the end of it, and that's all it was. But there was one guy who was one of our training instructors, and he was ex-military, and he wanted to carry it on. But I noticed within about 2 or 3 days, he'd sort of lowered his tone. And I don't know if somebody had gripped him or not, because he was very, very shouty for the first few days. But then after that, he was like, right then, here we go. This is what we're going to do. It was more of a jovial tone rather than a big angry tone. But I thought it would be way more like the military than what it was. But it wasn't. It was similar lines, but nowhere near as
so by the sounds of it, and I know, generally speaking, we as military, especially when we're looking back on what's gone on in the past, then generally speaking, we tend to just gloss over or pass over the tough stuff because we don't want to remember that really, which is great, which is the way it should be. So I mean, by the sounds of it, your transition from the military to Civvy Street and then into the fire service was pretty bumpy, wasn't it?
Yeah. And even at one point, so later on in my career, when I went to Lossiemouth, I went on to support weapons for the first time, so mortars. And I don't know why nobody told me about mortars to start with, because it was flipping life-changing. I was like, I can't believe the time that I want to get out, I finally found something that's brilliant. So whereas the rifle flights would just be flipping, crawling around through water and mud and shooting and all that sort of stuff, the very first time we had a job where we were working with SFSG at the end. So the Joint Forward Air Controllers, or whatever they're called, Jafatsu, they were operating out of RAF Lehman at the time. So we'd come down and meet them at Otterburn. And as they were doing their thing of bringing on aircraft, we were their mortar support, and we'd mortar something before the aircraft came in.
Right, got it, yeah.
And the very first time that we were going down to train with them, bearing in mind we're working with all these special forces from all around the world, the sergeant and stuff were going, right, who's got the frying pans? Who's got the bacon? Who's got the sausages? Who's got the eggs? And I was like, they're lying, aren't they? They're just having me along. I'm thinking, right, we're going to be on wrap packs. We're going to be cammed up. We're going to be all this sort of stuff. They're like, no, you're on mortars now, mate. We're sitting a couple of Ks behind them, and we're not doing any of that stuff. They were cooking up bacon and eggs every day and all sorts of stuff. And I was like, all them years that I've been a rifleman, why wasn't I doing this thing here? It's way better. The kit was a bit heavier, but I didn't really mind that. If it got me a sausage and egg banjo at the end of it, I was more than happy to do a bit of kit lifting. It was only when I got late on that I realised that there was that there. But I really, really enjoyed that. Joined the fire service, and I think I had that moment where I was like, I don't think the fire service is going to be what I think it is. I was expecting London's burning. I was thinking every day it'll be like flipping house fires everywhere, and it wasn't. So I rang up my old sergeant again, a guy called Skip Blaskett, and went, do you know if I wanted to come back in? I says, could I get back on mortars? And he was like, I'd make that happen. Don't you worry. I'll speak to the boss. I'll get you back on mortars. But there was one bit where I was like, right, maybe I want to go back in the military. You know, I'd split up from my wife. That was the thing that came out for my wife and my kid. And then I thought, no, I've just got to give the fire brigade a go. It's got to be better than what I think it's going to be. So, but luckily I did. I mean, I've been there 20 odd years now. So,
and that's like sometimes when people look at a situation through rose-tinted glasses, and then because that's their perception of what it's going to be like, and then when it's not, doesn't turn out like that, then they just give up straight away. Whereas you stuck it, and I think that one thing I've noticed about successful people, and I know that I adopt this principle, and I guess you do as well because of what you do now. So many people make decisions slowly and change them quickly when they don't work. Whereas you should be able to make a decision quickly and then change it slowly and see what can be done. And that doesn't mean to say just steadfast, keep it the same. I'm talking about the overall, globally, the decision you made, only start to change it slowly when you've maybe adjusted, like test and adjust your sites.
yeah, 100%. And like you say, even down to like hiring people now, one of the best bits of advice that it was another business podcast that I was listening to, but his saying was, hire slow, fire fast. So make sure you're picking the right person for your team, whatever it is, whether it's a relationship, whether it's whatever it may be. But you know what? If it's not working, then we might need to look at adjusting it again. And I don't think it suits into everything, but certainly around hiring, I think it's slightly opposite. Whereas most things we're quite considered and we go, right, no, we'll push through on this. But I think there's some things out there, certainly in business, that can drain you and just go, no, I'm actually taking too much away from that. My focus is taken away by this.
And I suppose whilst it's more difficult to fire someone from the RAF, Navy or Army, what you can do is post someone.
Yeah. Give them a nice little office job somewhere.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, and that's about firing fast, isn't it? Just make sure they're not, because if they're toxic, then you need to get them out. Because a toxic relationship in a military perspective can cost lives, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So, and in fact, in the fire service, because you know that, and you know more about that than me. So, you know, how do you deal with failure? And we might come on, not to anything that's operationally sensitive, right? But there must be times as a fire bobby where maybe you felt that either the units as a collective has failed or you personally, and then how do you come through the other side?
See, it sounds really bizarre, but we're in a really fortunate position in the fire service, that most of the times, the way I was always told to look at being a firefighter, they'll always say to you, "Will not save everyone. Some people will die, and that's just the way it is. But as long as you can drive away from that incident going, I gave that person the best chance to live." And he says that, like, most people would look at something like that and go, "We failed to keep that person alive." And somebody would look at that as a massive failure. That's a huge failure in somebody's eyes. And you're like, but no, but we gave them the best chance to live. Without our intervention, they were definitely going to die. But with our intervention, they had the best chance to live. And that's when it talks about failure for the fire service, that we're fortunate that I would say there's not, if any, incidents that we've driven away and gone, we haven't given that person the best chance of survival. I would say that more of my failure type stuff comes around business. So running a small business, and there's lots of little things. Like I joined it 2 days after my 18th birthday into the military, ran a business for a really short amount of time up in North Yorkshire, joined the fire service. So most of my time has been uniform career. And in that, you're told what to do, when to do it, what time to turn up to work and all that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden you're running a small business. So I actually took myself out of full-time fire service and went down to part-time. So I'm still classed as a whole-time firefighter, but I work half the hours that everybody else does, because I wanted to run my business. But when I started running the business, I was like, I don't know how to do this. I really, really don't know how to do it. I got a D in maths, so like my fiance, she's a flipping commercial director, works in big food industry, could tell you the numbers down to the very, very smallest minute. When we first got together, she's like, "What's your profit and loss?" I was like, I don't know.
What
What's your
does
gross
that
margin?
mean?
I
Yeah,
haven't got a clue. So what from your gross margin? What's your net margin? I don't know. I genuinely, and she couldn't understand it. But I was just like, listen, I'm just fudging through this. I'm just trying my best. At the time, I had an accountant that I was like, listen, mate, you're gonna have to try and help me here because I'm getting asked questions by the missus. She probably thinks I'm a right dropout. But yeah, somehow I've managed to fudge the business on for 10 years. We're now at a decade this month. And it's going okay. But yeah, I think the failure thing was stuff that I've done way in the past that I should have done. I should have changed things earlier, like that I've done along the way. I was too good at letting things fester that weren't going well. When really, and one of the conversations that we've spoken about was talk about coaching and mentoring.
yeah,
And I've surrounded myself with some really, really good people now. And also, I've had some coaches and mentors along the way as business coaches. And it's just had to change my view. Like I would have happily just carried on being okay as a small business. And then all of a sudden I was like, I don't want to be okay. I want to be the best that we can be as a business. We were really good at the services we provided, but the back of house stuff wasn't very well run, and that was my fault. So I then had to lead the change and change the culture and all that sort of stuff. But that all had to come from me. And I didn't know really how to do it. So I had to go away and learn it. And I just put it in a box for too long and went, we're doing all right, we're doing okay. But I didn't want to be okay. I wanted to be brilliant. And that's where my failures were of just putting things in the box for too long and not getting on with it.
And that's interesting because I know as a mentor, as a coach, because I work in this area regularly, and I think it's about not me. I never tell someone what to do. It's about asking world-class questions, because when you do that, because they've got the answer. I work with an organisation recently, and they've increased after 4 months, increased their turnover for July from 2023 to this by 48%.
Good effort. Good effort.
And you know what? I do not know anything about their business. What I do know, though, was what the questions to ask them to make them examine what they're doing themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think with anything like that, with questions are really important, aren't they? It's got to be open questions to get them giving you the answer that you need to hear. So if you just go, "How are things going?" They'll just go, "Okay." Where if you go, "Well, tell me what you're doing this year compared to last year, and we'll do some analysis on it." They've got to open up. They've got to flow then. But if you just say, "How's it going?" They'll just say, "Okay." So yeah, I think open questioning is really, really important. And I think it's really important to talk to your staff about open questions as well, because it gets the right answers. At some point, they're going to say the words that you want them to say. And it might be that light, the flicking of the switch in their brain to go, I need to have a look at this in a different way. When really, if you're just going, right, we're bumbling along, are we doing okay? Yeah, we're doing okay. Let's carry on bumbling along then. Whereas if you just ask the right open questions to go, actually, we need to strive on, drive on. As a small business, I've never ever thought about having board meetings. And then you're like, well, really, we should be having board meetings. I've not got a big board of directors. I've not got a chairman or anything like that. But in that board meeting, you'd probably get better answers to the questions that you would do over a text message or whatever it may be. So I think open questions are really, really important. Trying to get someone to open up their answer.
Thank you for that. Now, I've recognised that quite a few times during our chat that your demeanour or comment is like that you've been fortunate or lucky. The fact is, though, that I think you put a little bit of hard and smart work in every now and again.
Yeah, I think it's...
And on that, right, because we were talking about mortar section, right, how important and how transferable do you think the skills are that you discovered in your military career and fire service to what you're doing now and the transition to Civvy Street?
Um, I think I'd probably speak for a broad brush of people when you talk along these lines. That a lot of the stuff that are transferable are those qualities that you'd want in someone as a member of staff. So you want someone to turn up on time. In fact, if they're on time, they're late. You want someone there early.
Yeah,
You want them to know that they've got all their kit, like they're going to have everything they need to do that thing that they need to do. They're going to be presentable. They're going to be personable. They're going to be adaptable. It's all them things that you go, it's exactly what I'd want in a staff member. And to that end, that's why we went down the military covenant route to go, right, actually, I want to be surrounded by people like that. I want them people around me to, if I'm sending someone out to a client, that's who I want representing me.
yeah,
They've got my badge on their flipping chest. I want them representing me really, really well. And that's why we went down the military covenant route of going, right, let's see if we can surround ourselves with good people from that, and get them out there. And we've had some brilliant people working with us along the way. That you like, I sit and look at the feedback. The feedback's flipping incredible when you get ex-military people on the job. It really, really is incredible. Don't get me wrong, we've got other good trainers that haven't got a military background. But yeah, there's something a little bit X factor when you can send someone in to do a first aid session that's been a combat medic in Iraq.
yeah,
Just something like that, just being able to go. They've not just learned it out of a book. They've not sat 3 days in a holiday inn somewhere learning how to do this. They did it on a flipping 6-month deployment to Iraq or Afghanistan. They've been on the back of a Mert helicopter or whatever it may be. There's something a bit X factor about that, and people buy into it. But the skill set is those things I was talking about a minute ago. It's those. There's good and bad in everything, but I would say that the majority of the people that I've got that are military, ex-military, I know that if I say to them they need to be somewhere for 9 o'clock, they'll be there for 8 o'clock. They would take into the fact that there might be traffic. They'll go, I'll give myself a half hour slip for traffic, and I'm still there half an hour early. That's just the military
yeah.
mindset of adaptability and overcoming.
And that's interesting because I when I found out that I have to be in Coventry tomorrow, the first thing I looked at is whereabouts, how far it is, how long it's going to take me, and then I put in a fudge factor.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm brilliant. It's not to impress you. It's to impress upon you that I think that's just driven into us, isn't it?
Yeah. It goes back to your old map reading, doesn't it? You know, you have to walk at a certain pace to hit your targets and hit your checkpoints and all that sort of stuff. I work backwards like that. So I go, right, if I've got to go to there, how do I need to sort of set off to get for that? So I went up to Manchester this morning. So I knew I had a 8:30 start in Manchester. So I work back, I look on Google Maps and I go, yeah, but there's no traffic at the minute. So let's say it's 2.5 hours ago. Well, let's call that 3.5 hours. And then I've got to get it. So I always factor in that little bit extra. And that's where most of the military mindset comes in a little, I think, where you give yourself that little wriggle room, don't you? You give yourself a little bit of play to make sure it all goes well.
So, and this next question is, and I'd like you to think of this because I'll frame it. The Burr question is, what's the secret of your success? And I know that you still got some way to go to whatever success is for you, because we were chatting about success is different for different people. So what is it for you, and how do you turn failure into success?
So we had in the pre-talk early, we had a little chat. I think you alluded to it a minute ago. I feel incredibly lucky. I'm a kid from a council estate in Glasgow, and then a kid from a council estate in Leicester. I got into the job that I'd always wanted to do in the fire service, and now I'm running a business and all that sort of stuff. But that level of success, I don't know what it is. I don't know where that ceiling is. Are we a multi-million-pound company? No, far from it. Really, really far from it. But I would look at success as I live in a nice house with a nice fiance and have a car on the drive and a roof over my head and all that sort of stuff. And I would look at that as success. But I would also then look at it as going, I want to be able to look back and, or I want my eulogy to say, he did a bit, didn't he? He like, because the easy thing for most people to do is when I joined the military at 18 was do 22 years and take a pension. Or the easy thing when I joined the fire service was do 30 year and take a pension. I didn't. I wanted to see what I've always thought there was something bigger out there than just like doing the status quo of the military or the fire service. So that's why we went out and don't get me wrong, my business runs quite aligned to the fire service. A lot of the stuff that we do is quite similar to the fire service, like fire risk assessments, fire training, first aid, working at height, all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, for me, it's being able to go away and go, he did a bit and he gave it a go. Like when I was still a probationary firefighter. So at the time, you were a probationary firefighter for usually between about 2 and 4 years. While I was a probationary firefighter, I stupidly bought a pub. And you're like, I want to be able to look back and go, it wasn't the most successful pub in the world, but he had a go, he did a bit. And that's how I want to sort of see my success is just, I've got that thing of a life less ordinary. Like whatever the status quo is, whatever the normal is, let's live just a little bit outside it and see what we can do. And we do it with our training company, the package that we've had today. So most people do first aid. We've got amputated arms. We've got blood that squirts out of stuff. I've got a cap that I can put on that's got a fake skull hanging out. And we go into these companies and go, this is flipping different to anything we've ever had. And that's where I want all of my different facets to be. I want all of my different things to be like that, just a little bit out of the ordinary and just living on that side of it to go, yeah, it could have just been this thing, but he tried to just be that thing a little bit different. And I quite like that.
Yeah, and because of course it's first choice safety training and consultancy that you do. And I know bringing a little bit of realism is better, because it puts them in a position where when the stuff does hit the fan and the real stuff happens, they're going to be better equipped to deal with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. My fiance, she's seen the package coming today. She was like, she can't even look at it. And when we go out, there are people that sort of feel a little bit poorly sometimes when we're doing these things where there's blood squirting out of stuff and all that sort of stuff. But if they can't take it when we're in a nice classroom environment, they're there to be the first aiders for their company. So what are they going to be like if they're actually facing real blood, real screams, all of the sort of real emotion that comes around it? I'd like to think that they would kick into some other place and just do it, just get on with it. But I think we best prepare them. That for me, it's the old military thing of train hard, fight easy. So if we give you the best, most realistic training that we possibly can, then hopefully if you ever encounter this, and touch wood you don't, but if you ever encounter it, then hopefully you're best placed to do it. You like nothing comes as much of a shock to you if you've seen and felt stuff that's a little bit realistic. So yeah, we've got all weird and wonderful stuff, whether it's all the flipping trauma stuff, or whether it's for fire training. We've got a smokehouse that we can take out. So an inflatable room where we can actually put people into a smoky environment just so they can actually see and experience it. But instead of just putting them in a smoky environment, we have a smoke detector going off and we have a baby crying noise. And you're like, well, if you can deal with this with zero visibility, you'll be all right.
And that brings realism into it, you know, and puts you at the sharp point. Where
definitely.
So
and that
go on.
That's what I was going to. That's generally they're the things that we work with some brilliant companies up and down the country. One of the main reasons why we've got into a lot of those different companies is one person has worked with us at quite a big national company, and then they've moved on and went, you want to see the company we were using back there, and then they've invited us in, and we've got them, and then they've moved on again and we've been invited in. So in that 10 years, we've done some really, really good work with some really, really good businesses, and it's all been word of mouth. And I think it's one of the best referral options is word of mouth, because you're not trying to sell to them. You're just going, actually, somebody's told you that we're quite good at that thing we do. Give us a chance to come and prove it to you. We'll come and prove it to you.
Fantastic. So fire service, military, probably one of the closest social networks that you can have. And with networking is important to me because, as you know, I run a business networking online group. How important do you think networking is, building your social and business network?
Huge, and I'm only just realizing it very, very recently, hence why I'm on this podcast. I went on to a friend's podcast last week. Another business mentor chap that does a podcast, I've applied to go on to that. But the whole thing for LinkedIn and stuff like that is absolutely huge and massive at the minute. But equally, I've done everything from, I dare say, quite a lot of your listeners will do it. I've done everything from your for networking to your BNI, and then come up all the way through that sort of stuff. Wasn't really suited to my business per se. I didn't really make much money out of it, if any money at all. But it was really, really good to surround myself with really, really good people. There was an accountant in there that's still my accountant. There was a lawyer in there that if I ever get any bad debtors, he will go and sort it out for me very, very quickly. The photographer, the social media guy, I still work with them. And that's at a sort of like a lower level. But what I'm trying to do now is grow the upper level of it, of your podcasts, your LinkedIns and those sorts of things. From where I was networking locally in Leicester, I think I've not saturated it, but sort of got a good bunch of people around me from that. Now it's going, right, what can we do at national level? What can we sort of do with like some of the companies we work with, like Cadbury's? If I work with Cadbury's, how do I get to know all the different people all around the country from all the different parts of Cadbury's, or Mondelez, who is their parent company? How do I get to know all of those people? And I'm not going to do it in a networking event in Leicester. It's about them thinking bigger. It's about targeted networking. So actually going out and trying to find these people rather than waiting for them to come to me. So yeah, I'm massively trying to get my head around now. What do you do to firstly build your own brand? I don't want to be Scott Mathie Inc., but I want people to go, do you know, if I wanted anything fire related, I'd go to Scott. Or if I wanted anything something related, I'd go to Scott. So it's not that I want to be a flipping famous person. I couldn't think of anything worse. But I want to be the thought leader in certain things. Like certainly for things around fire, I want to be a thought leader in that. So I want people to be able to come to me or be front of mind if they ever have that question. So that's the brand that I'm trying to build up at the minute. And that's why I think things like the podcast and stuff will really help, to the point that we want to have our own podcast at some point. We've been having conversations of starting our own podcast, and I'm doing a lot of research in the background at the moment of other health and safety podcasts and stuff. So yeah, that network, that brand building, I think is really, really important. But one thing that I do appreciate as well, I heard a really, really good piece very recently, and I thought it really struck home. We are quite focused at the minute on social media, Google pay-per-clicks, having a fancy magazine that flipping you can send on an email. We've got all these sort of digital sort of things. I can put out a YouTube channel. We can do all of these sorts of things. And the chap that I was listening to on a podcast said, but what did businesses do before all of this? They used to knock on doors. They used to pick up the phone. They used to jump in their car. He says, why aren't we doing a little bit of both? We all rely on just the digital now. Why aren't we relying on both of them to work? He said it worked for all those years before digital, so it hasn't changed. But another good analogy he gave me, he says, how full is your inbox? How many emails do you get a day? So you now see emails coming in going, bloody hell, I'm swamped. There's so many emails. He said, but if you get a letter from a company, it will probably be one letter that day.
And there's all sorts of different ways, because it's about building relationships, and that was what the question I posed is based on. And the digital strategy is part of the overall strategy. And it's interesting you say about starting your podcast, because that's what I show people how to do as well. You know, businesses like you, and it's all about sharing the wisdom, sharing the knowledge, and helping others, so you can 10 times it. and that's why I love doing these podcasts, because it's great. So we've already touched on it. How transferable do you think the skills are that you learn in the military to Civvy Street?
I think, like I said earlier on, for me, it's a lot of it is to do with reliability. Certainly in my business, I want to know that if I put something into someone's calendar, they're going to go, they're going to do it really well, they're going to perform for the company, we're going to get some really, really good feedback. And like I said earlier on, I always think there's a little bit of X factor when you've sent an ex-military person. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the humor. I don't know if it's there. Most military people are quite outgoing. I don't know what it is, but it always seems to have it might be just how they carry themselves. A lot of our stuff is speaking in front of quite a lot of people. So I don't know if it's just how they carry themselves or what, but they usually have this little bit of X factor and a little bit of shine, and it usually comes off really, really well. But for me, I can sleep sound at night knowing that if I've got someone going out that needs to be somewhere 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, they're going to be there with all the kit good to go, and they're going to do a brilliant job.
Right.
And there, I think as a small business owner, that's an absolute godsend. It's a godsend to have that trust in people.
And the reason I asked that question again is because I just wanted to drill home how important that is. And with regards to a top tip, right, to someone who's either still in the military and thinking of leaving, or someone who's left the military, is a veteran, and maybe having, or even a civilian who's not been in the military but likes people who have been in the military, and maybe having a good day or a bad day, what's the one tip that would shine through that could help them in any situation?
I was really, really encouraged recently, and I wish I was more forward thinking like this person was. I was reached out to by a guy in my old regiment, and he says, "I've not PVR'd, I'm not getting out at the moment, but I've just got my health and safety qualifications. Could I do some work experience with you and some shadowing and stuff like that?" And nobody's ever sort of asked that question before. And I think that's the top tip for me is, before you leave the military, start your preparation in the military. So if you want to be, I don't know, a financial advisor, get your financial qualifications whilst you're in the military, because you're still being paid.
Yeah.
And then if you're going to start that little business as a financial advisor, start it whilst you're in the military. And then by the time you leave, you can hit the ground running. I think quite a lot of the time we wait and then we go, right, I'm out now. Sure, I've not got the thing that I need.
And I know that from personal experience, because we were talking before. 1988, I left. I had 5 jobs because the financial advisor in 1988, just after the financial crash, wasn't paying. No one was investing. Yeah. And plus the fact that I was an apprentice and no one was investing with me, because they said, "Oh, look at him, just left the army, no experience." So that's a very good point. Yeah, valuable. So now, coming to the end, what does the future hold for you?
I'm at a bit of a crossroads. I don't say this lightly, and I don't say it out loud very often, because I feel in a privileged position where quite a lot of people want to join the fire service but don't get the opportunity to. And I don't say it lightly, but I'm at the position now where I'm like, maybe it's time to sort of focus more on the business and really push it on. The business is 10 years old now, and from something that we talked about earlier on, the coaching and mentoring and just bigger thinking, I want to really push the business on and go, right, how good can I make this thing? I genuinely don't think I could make the fire service good, but I genuinely think I could make the business good. So that's where my mindset is at the minute is, right, how do I get in the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, how do I get to that 10-year goal of this utopia of what I want this business to look like? It's all stuck up there. That's my bigger thinking at the minute is, if I need it to happen in 10 years, then what do I need to do in 5? To get that thing in 5, what do I need to do in 3? And to get that 3, what do I need to do in the next 12 months? So I'm just trying to think around those things at the minute, but it's really difficult. It doesn't come naturally to me. And that's where I am at the minute. I want that bigger utopia of our business operating from places. We are already national, but I want us having a national coverage. as in bricks and mortar, and just basically being the leaders at what we do. We don't like just having people coming through as numbers. We want to be the leaders and have people like speak highly of us. That's a massive one for me, is people going. We're not just coming there to tick a box. We're going there to come out better afterwards.
And I know I appreciate the driving force that you've got on excellence, because what we didn't touch on actually, which we can do briefly, is you are a coach and mentor to guys in the fire service now. They come to you as the Yoda, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit different at the moment. So I'm on, we call them watches. And so I'm on a watch at the moment where quite a lot of the people on there are coming up toward retirement age. But for most of the watches in the fire service, you regularly have either probationary or young firefighters. And you are leaned upon a hell of a lot. So even though I've never gone through the rank system, well, the role system as it's now called in the fire service, you are still sort of leaned on a heck of a lot, as I'm sure there would have been in the senior privates and stuff like that. But yeah, I think as firefighters, you've got a lot of experience to draw back on. And what we've found is that the sort of bigger jobs in the fire service are few and far between now. So actually, there's not a lot of people in the fire brigade that will have the sort of experience to draw back on of what that building is likely to do if it carries on burning, or what the roof is likely to look like if it's exposed to any more fire or weight or loads. Or so yeah, you are leaned on quite a lot. So even though and it is something that I'm looking about, is taking roles on at the moment of going through some promotion. You are leaned on quite heavily because there's quite a lot of inexperience just due to the fact that the jobs are few and far between now. But it's not done on purpose. I think it just comes naturally that if you've got a crew of 4, one's the driver, one's the boss. There's usually one that's not done a long time, and then there's you. So it's down to you to try and answer a lot of the questions that are there.
And that's life in general. For instance, I've been in business for 37 years now, 15 years in the military. So have I seen some good stuff? Yeah. Have I seen some bad stuff? Yeah, in business and in military service. And the fact is that it's about having that little bit of knowledge that might come in handy to someone who's thinking, what do I do?
Yeah, but another nice thing that's happened recently is when I had the pub in Leicester, there was a lady that worked there called Anna, and her daughter, she's all grown up now. From when I remember she was a little tot, but then all of a sudden I got a message from Anna saying her boyfriend is parachute regiment. He's really bored. There's nothing going on in the world at the minute. There's no doors that need kicking in or whatever the paras do. And he's interested in joining the fire service. So it was really, really nice recently to actually quite coach him through and get him to the point where he managed to get in. He failed the first, he didn't get in the first time and then got in the second time. But along the way, he then wants to come and help me in my business as well. So it's actually worked out really, really nice for me. He's now shadowing a lot. When we were saying earlier about proactive people, he's been really, really proactive about, trying to get into the fire service. What can I do? What can I do to better my chances? But then as soon as he found out he was in the fire service, he was also going, yes, that's number one priority, but I've got a lot of experience and stuff from my time in the military that I think would be really good to give to your company. So yeah, we're letting him concentrate on the fire service first. Just go and get your competencies, go and become a firefighter. But yeah, he's already gone off and got his teaching qualifications and stuff, so he can be a trainer as soon as he's ready. So yeah,
I mean that's great thinking ahead, definitely. Yeah. Because one of the things that when I'm helping people set up business or they grow in the business, I say to them, what's your exit strategy?
Yeah.
Because actually, when you're writing your business plan, you should be writing your exit strategy as well, because then that can really make it good.
The way that is explained to me on a podcast that I listened to again recently is that if you don't know what you're working for, then how do you know when you're going to get there or how to get there?
Yeah.
And the way it was put across to me is you won't build a house without some architect's plans. Like nobody just goes, right, I'll just buy 10,000 bricks and hope for the best. You have a set of architect's plans that tell you how to get to that finished house. And all of them little things that I've sort of got as a little thread now they're massive to me. Exactly like
Yeah.
you just said there. You've got to know where the final end game is so that you know if you're getting there and if you're going in the right direction. Because otherwise you're just you're driving with a blindfold on, aren't you?
Yeah, because anything that success, anything that's success driven has to be measured, because then you need to know when you've got there. Right,
Definitely.
so listen, we could carry on for days. I know we could. I want to end with something that's important to you. You're listening. How do people get in touch with you, Scott? What's the best way?
Again, the networking thing. I think probably the best one is LinkedIn. So it's a funny Scottish name. So it's Scott Mathie, Mathie on LinkedIn, and you'll see this horrible face in the picture. But then the website is.
By the way, if you're listening to the audio, he's not that ugly, right?
In fact, the picture's a few years old. It's a little bit slimmer with more hair. I should put a more realistic picture on. And then the website is www. and then the number 1, and then C for Charlie, S for sugar, T for tango, C for Charlie.co.uk. So 1cstc.co.uk. And if you want to ever email me, it's just scott@1cstc.co.uk.
Brilliant. Scott, thank you for your service to the country. Thank you for your service to this podcast, and have a brilliant day.
And you too. Thank you for the invite. It's been a pleasure.
JoeTeams.com is a resource I have created to fulfill my mission to help 1 million veterans and business entrepreneurs like you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations they deserve. JoeTeams.com is jam-packed full of valuable resources specifically designed to help you on your journey to success. Visit JoeTeams.com now to find out how you can join and start your journey to success immediately. That's JoeTeams.com, JoeTeams, JoeTeams.com. And until we meet again, have a brilliant day.